From my good friend of 5 years. Everything he puts his mind to, he blows away from, whether it's electro music producing, which hopefully you guys have either listened to before on the Facebook page, or whether it's his startup, his entrepreneurial efforts. And I'm glad to present my good friend, Daniel Emberman. Enjoy.
Thanks, Daniel. I just want to start out by thanking you all for coming. I'm actually pretty excited to give this talk, and over the past couple of years I've picked up a lot of tips and tricks about giving presentations, and hopefully at least a couple of you guys walk away with one or two cool things you didn't know from before. So with that, I'm going to start my presentation on giving presentations. So I figured I'd start out with a bit about who am I. Well, right now I am finishing up my master's in computer science at UCSB. My main emphasis is machine learning and distributed systems, and I'm also getting the master's level certificate in technology management. But I also have a side job as a musician, and I've done decently well in that side job. One of my songs hit the front page of Reddit. I've been featured on almost every major EDM blog. I've played shows in Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, and I've gotten a couple of record deal offers. And even though I really decided that wasn't the direction I wanted to go in, kind of getting experience in one of the most ruthless businesses out there is definitely something I'm going to take with me for the rest of my journey. And I've also had the amazing opportunity to see every level of a business being created. Going from starting my own business, literally in my garage, all the way up to having an internship at the single most profitable corporation on earth. And best of all, last summer, I finally got to achieve one of my life goals of winning a giant check. And all of these achievements I can really tie back to one major fact about me, and that is that I'm a performer. I started playing piano at 3 years old. I wrote my first song at 9, did my first talent show at 11, and all through high school I was either either a song leader at a summer camp, or running for political offices, or being a lead role in the musicals. Pretty much anything I could do to get in front of a group of people. And over those years, that actually helped me develop a lack of sensitivity towards public speaking. But it didn't make me a good presenter. What made me at least a decent presenter was my experiences both at Apple and through the New Venture competition, where between the two, I've probably spent at least a solid week of my life doing nothing but having my presentations torn to shreds by seasoned and experienced speech coaches. And my hope is that through this presentation I can kind of teach some of the skills both in how to create the presentation itself and how to present it to your audience. So that brings me to a good presentation. There are 4 major aspects of a good presentation: a compelling narrative, informative graphics, a well-practiced delivery, and a presenter who can manage his or her stress. So let's start talking about the narrative. A good narrative creates a cohesive conversation. Now you might think I'm talking about creating a cohesive conversation between you and the audience, but I'm actually not. I'm talking about creating a cohesive conversation between you and your slides. If your slides are made the correct way, then at no point are you actually memorizing the speech itself. You're looking up at your slides, it's asking you a question, and you're replying to it. You're just describing what's on the screen, and in doing so, you sound like you've rehearsed a speech. You also want to give the audience a sense of an overarching story. Some people do that through humanization. They talk about themselves a little bit, and then make you want to listen to them. Or there's also people who they'll have a metaphor at the very beginning, and then bring back the metaphor at the very end of it so they can tie it all back together into a single story. And finally, a good narrative maintains a healthy sense of rhythm between the ebbs and the flows. And I'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later. So as far as narrative structure, whenever I create a slide deck, I like to start with the what, why, how, and what. What problem are you trying to solve? Why do I care? How did you solve it? And what does this mean in a larger context? You can actually think of this kind of as an hourglass. You want to start out as broad as possible to attract people in, because the first minute or two of your pitch deck or your presentation is a sales pitch. You have 1 or 2 minutes to convince everyone in the audience that you are worth the next 10 to 15 minutes of their lives. Otherwise, they're going to zone out, go on Facebook, do anything except for listen to you. Once you actually have them interested in what you're saying, then you can start going into the how, which is the implementation details. How you figured out that this is the right market. How you figured out that this is the faster way to build the product that you've been building. And then once you've done all the nitty-gritty details and you convinced everyone that you have the coolest product ever, you're not done. And you have to bring it back out to a broader context so that they leave with a sense of understanding what they've just learned from you. So to start with the what and the why, my favorite example would be any Apple advertisement. This ad for an iPad has the perfect why. What will your verse be? In one sentence and one photograph, Apple manages to convince you that this product will make you happier, will make you creative. Maybe there's some creative project you haven't been working on, and this will help facilitate that project. Without explaining anything about what an iPad is or what it does, it makes you feel good about the thought about owning an iPad. Compare that to older Samsung ads, where Samsung was very focused on the what. How fast the processor is, how many megapixels the camera is, how many gigs of RAM you have. You might walk away from a Samsung ad knowing that it's a better phone, but you won't feel good about it the way you feel good about an Apple product. So for the most part, the why is you're validating that there's a problem. So a perfect example of a presentation with a why is stress is ruining your life and keeping you from being the best person you can be. Through years of training, I have learned how to help you get rid of all the stress in your life. In 2 sentences, half the ears perked up. Everyone here would love to know, how do I get rid of the stress in my life? Please tell me more. And then you can finally go into the details of whatever Scientology religion you've come up with. And then finally, you really want the audience to believe in you by the end of your why. You want them to believe that there's a problem, there's a solution, and then you actually come up with that solution. And then you can start getting into the how. And the how is the implementation details. When you're creating something for investors, the how is, yeah, there's a market problem, I found a solution, and here's all the market research that will essentially show that I've done my homework and I've proven that there's money to be made in this industry. Or if you're giving a more technical interview, it can kind of be along the lines of, here's the actual implementation that I built that's X amount faster, and here's how I made it faster. But there is one major caveat with the how section, and that's not to get lost in the trees. Don't get too technical, and even if you're giving like a very tech-driven presentation, be careful about who your audience is. If you're presenting to the director of your department, and that director is an engineer who hasn't practiced in 5 years, chances are you're going to lose them if you go way too deep into the actual implementation details. So now you've convinced people there's a problem, you've convinced them that you've found a solution, and you've shown the solution you found. But you're not done. Because if you end the slides right now, you're going to leave them with a sense that you did something awesome, but they can't really explain what it was. So you need to kind of pull back out to why. And when you pull back out, you want to give them a sense that by listening to your lecture, they left a little bit smarter, a little bit happier, and a little bit more complete. Just anything you can do to make sure that the audience leaves feeling good about having taken the time to listen to you. Now I want to talk a little bit about flow, because it's something that not enough people talk about when it comes to presentations. Flow is mostly variation. You want to vary your slides. You don't want to have 3-point slide after 3-point slide after 3-point slide. It will get monotonous and you're going to lose your audience. So having a picture only, followed by a 3-point slide, followed by a single sentence slide, followed by a pause, can really help bring attention to certain facts. Especially if you just went really deep into something